And for us, building local capacity starts with small projects and small victories. Again, something that was spoken about earlier. But for us, we try to identify projects that provide visible and short-term results. It requires sometimes that we work with fledgling organizations that are composed of individuals who are committed to seeing change. And so they, in their commitment to seeing change, and if we can have some small visible change, it enables them to bring more neighborhood residents into the process, and again to sort of spread the responsibility for making those changes. So the way that we work in East St. Louis is that, as I said, we identify particular local partners who we see as committed to making change. We have, at this time, one community liaison who lives in East St. Louis, but actually is an employee of the East St. Louis Action Research Project. And then we employ a number of graduate students who maintain contact directly with our community partners and with our community liaison. Our community liaison is on the ground there. As you might understand, we're about 3.5 hours away from East St. Louis, so for us to be in constant physical contact with people there is not always easy. And so for us to have a person in the neighborhood attending meetings, going to city council, being able to tell us what's going on and what the dynamics are is quite important. So, as I mentioned, we have a broad range of faculty expertise that we bring to our project. It started out in urban planning and in architecture, and we now have the range from the Graduate School of Library and Information Sciences, where they've had over a long period of time, about the past 8 years, worked with a range of different organizations to develop digital capacity in East St. Louis. They've also worked to transfer technological expertise to maintain not only the infrastructure but also a series of computer labs. So they've worked with kids in the high school to actually get them to understand how to maintain a computer lab, and they become then responsible for that. So transferring some of that responsibility to not just the local population, but to the youth who sometimes feel somewhat disenfranchised. Also, the Department of Recreation, Sport, and Tourism, again, was brought in about 10 years ago because the Park District asked us to work with them because they had a lot of failing infrastructure, as there is in the rest of the city, but also that the parks were seen as unsafe places. And so in working with the faculty members in the Department of Recreation, Sport, and Tourism and the Department of Landscape Architecture, they've actually been able to implement some maintenance, to devise other strategies for how to maintain their parks, and to work again with students to rethink some of the park design to make it easier to work with and to offer people citizens in the community what they need. So I think we were asked to identify a couple of the challenges as well as the rewards, and I'll just try to briefly go through. The first one, obviously, is definitely the scarcity of resources. Residents in the communities that we work in have limited time and money to expend on future-looking activities because a lot of them are really engaged in day-to-day living and what that takes. We find that there's a very small number of individuals who are actually able to devote themselves to leadership as a result of their other responsibilities. We also find that perhaps because of the limited resources in the communities that we work in, there's sometimes a reluctance to share resources and to network. And there's kind of sometimes a degree of territoriality that exists among our partners. The second major challenge for us in East St. Louis particularly is the lack of government and other institutional support for the neighborhoods and the not-for-profits. And that may be something that we can discuss a little bit more. And I think the final major challenge for us is the slow pace of change. And that is, for us, in light of keeping people interested and involved over time, both in the community and within the university. So we've had a long-term engagement, but it also takes time to see change in that. And so keeping our partners involved and keeping the residents and the students involved over that long period of time is sometimes a challenge. I think one of the primary benefits of working in place-based or building place-based capacity and targeting resources is that there is this potential for real and visible progress. And just a brief story, when I started working with SLARP and the University of Illinois in 2001 and 2002, the first organization that I worked with was the South End Neighborhood Development Organization. This is an organization that had been around for a while, but they had regenerated themselves, and they had a small group of pretty energized residents that wanted to take on some of the most troublesome issues. They wanted to challenge City Hall and the City Council to be responsible to the neighborhood residents. So for 2 spring semesters in 2002 and 2003, I worked with faculty and students from landscape architecture and urban planning to do a series of SWOT analysis, to look at inventorying the physical conditions in the neighborhood, and to help the neighborhood residents prioritize goals and develop a comprehensive neighborhood plan and implementation strategy. In successive semesters, I've worked with students and other nonprofits, Faith-Based Neighborhood Development Corporation, to look at housing and to propose housing designs for different areas in the neighborhood. And for a while, I had to step out of that neighborhood, and recently I was asked to identify some of the improvements in the neighborhood as a result of those efforts, and it was actually quite gratifying because, among other things, there's 4 major streets in that neighborhood that now have paving and sidewalks, which they didn't have, so people can get out and walk, and you can drive without danger of getting a flat tire or breaking an axle. The Neighborhood Community and Youth Center was rehabilitated and reopened after being closed for 18 years. The neighborhood park now has new equipment, and recently a 65-unit subsidized elderly housing project was opened by the faith-based community organization in the neighborhood. So those are just a few of the things that have happened as a result of a very small seed that was planted, where we got the neighborhood together to start thinking about and prioritizing and working on holding City Hall accountable. So I'll end with that. Thank you.